Airport employees humiliated and kicked Sasha Obama out, but everything changed when her father showed up. Subscribe and write in the comments where you're watching us from. The sun had barely risen over Washington, D.C., painting the early morning sky in hues of orange and pink. Sasha Obama, 21 years old and determined to carve out her own identity apart from her famous family, adjusted her backpack and glanced at the time on her phone. It was just past 6:30 a.m., and she was on her way to catch a flight to New York City. She had been invited to present her research at a prestigious youth conference, a chance to share her voice and ideas with other bright young minds. She felt a mix of excitement and nerves. Her thoughts were a swirl of rehearsed lines and potential questions from the audience. Her father had given her a pep talk the night before, his words still echoing in her mind. "Remember, you're there because of your work, your dedication. Nobody can take that from you." She appreciated his support, but it was hard not to feel the weight of her last name wherever she went. As she stepped into the bustling terminal at Reagan National Airport, the noise and chaos of early morning travelers hit her like a wave. Announcements echoed overhead, interspersed with the hum of voices and the click of suitcases rolling across tiled floors. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted from nearby kiosks, mingling with the faint scent of jet fuel that lingered in the air. Sasha navigated the crowded space with practiced ease, her small frame allowing her to slip through clusters of travelers. She approached the check-in counter, clutching her e-ticket and ID. "Good morning," Sasha said, her tone polite but brisk. The woman behind the desk, wearing a name tag that read M. Reynolds, finally glanced up, her eyes narrowing slightly as she scanned Sasha's face and then the documents. "Flying to New York?" Reynolds asked, her tone neutral but clipped. "Yes," Sasha replied. "Business class?" Reynolds repeated, raising an eyebrow as she inspected the ticket. She held the ticket up, as if checking it for a counterfeit watermark, pausing a beat too long. "Are you sure this is your ticket?" Reynolds finally asked, her voice tinged with incredulity. Sasha blinked, caught off guard. "Yes, of course it's my ticket," she answered. "Is there a problem?" Reynolds pressed her lips into a thin line as she scanned the ticket again and clicked around on her computer. She mumbled, "We don't usually see passengers like this." She stopped mid-sentence, her face tensing as if realizing she'd said too much. "Never mind. Just making sure everything's in order," she said curtly. A flicker of irritation passed through Sasha, but she tried to brush it off. She wasn't about to let a rude employee ruin her morning. However, when Reynolds called over another agent and whispered something while pointing in Sasha's direction, that flicker of irritation ignited into a small flame of anger. The second agent, a man with a stern expression, approached and scrutinized Sasha's ID with exaggerated care. "This ticket is for business class," he said, his tone laden with suspicion. "I know," Sasha replied, her voice steady but firm. "It's my ticket." The man exchanged a look with Reynolds, then shrugged and reluctantly handed back her documents. "Fine, go ahead," he muttered, waving her through with a dismissive gesture. Sasha grabbed her boarding pass and ID, jaw clenched, and moved toward the security checkpoint. She could feel eyes on her. Other passengers were glancing curiously, but no one said anything. Her father's advice echoed again in her mind. Don't let anyone make you feel less than you are. She took a deep breath, steadying herself for the next hurdle. The line at security was long but orderly. TSA agents barked instructions as travelers shuffled forward in fits and starts. Sasha placed her backpack on the conveyor belt and stepped through the metal detector without incident. As she reached for her bag on the other side, a TSA agent suddenly blocked her path. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said. "We need to perform a secondary screening." Sasha frowned, glancing at the conveyor belt where her bag sat untouched. "Why, is there a problem?" she asked. "It's just a random check." The agent replied, though his tone suggested otherwise. He gestured toward a separate area cordoned off by retractable barriers. "This way, please." Heart pounding with frustration, Sasha complied. The random check involved an invasive pat-down, a thorough rummaging through her bag, and repeated questions about the purpose of her trip. At one point, the agent held up her boarding pass. "Who bought your ticket?" the agent asked, his eyes narrowing. "I did," Sasha said sharply. "It's for a conference." The agent smirked. "Pretty fancy conference if you're flying business class," he remarked. Sasha's cheeks flushed with indignation, but she bit her tongue. She knew better than to escalate. When the agent finally finished the exhaustive search, he shoved her belongings back toward her with a perfunctory, "You're good to go." Sasha quickly reassembled her things and walked away from the screening area, struggling to maintain her composure. Her flight was due to depart in less than an hour, and she tried to shake off what had just happened. She headed toward her gate, telling herself that the worst was over. As she approached the gate, a woman in an airline uniform intercepted her. The woman had a stiff posture and a name badge that indicated she was a manager. She looked directly at Sasha with an unreadable expression. I need to see your ID and boarding pass again," the manager said, her tone devoid of courtesy. Confused and growing annoyed, Sasha handed over her documents yet again, her patience wearing dangerously thin. The manager inspected Sasha's ID and ticket for an uncomfortably long moment. Finally, she spoke. "We've been informed there may be an issue with your ticket. Please come with me," she said. Alarm shot through Sasha. "What kind of issue?" she demanded, her voice sharp with anxiety and anger. "Just a routine verification," the woman replied, already turning on her heel and walking briskly toward a side corridor. "This way, please." Sasha hesitated. Her instincts told her something was off, but with few options and a plane to catch, she followed, heart pounding faster with each step. The manager led Sasha down a quiet, narrow hallway away from the bustling gate area. A sign on the wall read "Authorized Personnel Only." Sasha's unease grew with every step. When they were out of earshot of other passengers, the woman stopped and turned to face Sasha. "I'm sorry, but we can't allow you to board this flight," she said coldly, her words cutting through the air. "You'll need to leave the airport." Sasha stared at her in disbelief. "What? Why?" she exclaimed. The woman simply shrugged. "We have our reasons," she said, offering no further explanation. Fury surged through Sasha, hot and quick. "This is unacceptable. I've done nothing wrong," she protested. The manager crossed her arms over her chest. "If you don't leave willingly, we'll have security escort you out," she warned. Sasha felt her whole body shaking, with rage, with humiliation, with shock. She clenched her fists at her sides, her mind racing. Her eyes stung with tears that she refused to let fall. She would not give this woman the satisfaction of seeing her break. With trembling hands, Sasha pulled out her phone and dialed the one person she knew could help. The call picked up after a single ring. "Dad," she said shakily when her father's familiar voice answered, "I need you." Even through her turmoil, she could hear him immediately switch into crisis mode. His voice was calm and steady. "I'm on my way," he assured her. Those 4 words eased her panic slightly, but her ordeal was far from over. Sasha ended the call and looked around. The corridor was eerily quiet compared to the busy terminal, and she suddenly felt very alone. Her flight was supposed to depart in less than 45 minutes, and here she was, stuck in a hidden corner of the airport, being treated like a criminal. She fought to keep her breathing steady. A few minutes later, Her phone buzzed with a text. It was from her father. "I'll be there in 15 minutes. Stay where you are." She exhaled shakily and replied with a simple, "Okay." 15 minutes felt like an eternity, but at least help was on the way. The sound of approaching footsteps jolted her. 2 TSA agents, one male, one female, strode down the corridor toward her. Both wore stern expressions. The man held a clipboard tightly against his side, and the woman carried a handheld scanner. "Ma'am, we need to conduct an additional screening," the man said, voice clipped. "Please set your bag on the table." Sasha's jaw tightened. "I've already been screened, twice," she replied, striving to keep her voice calm even as anger flared again. She remembered her parents teaching her the power of composure in moments like this. The female agent's face remained impassive. "This is a random check, ma'am. Compliance is mandatory," she said firmly. Reluctantly, Sasha placed her bag on the small metal table they had set up. She watched in silent outrage as they unzipped it and rifled through her belongings, with little regard for her privacy or the order she'd packed things in. Clothes were shoved aside. Her toiletries bag was dumped out entirely, and the contents scattered across the table. "Is this really necessary?" Sasha asked, her voice wavering despite her efforts to sound strong. Neither agent answered her. The male agent picked up a hardcover book Sasha had brought for the conference. "What's this about?" he asked, as if a book were contraband. "It's a book for the conference I'm attending," Sasha said, irritation creeping into her tone. He squinted at the cover, then tossed it aside without a word. Meanwhile, the female agent ran the scanner slowly over Sasha's laptop, as if expecting it to reveal something nefarious. Sasha looked around, desperate for any witness to this harassment, but the corridor was deserted. After several agonizing minutes of this invasive inspection, the agents stepped back. "We'll need to hold on to your bag for further analysis," the male agent said flatly, closing her suitcase but keeping it in his possession. Sasha stepped forward in alarm. "What? No, you can't just take my things! I have a flight to catch!" "I'm not going anywhere without my bag," she protested. The female agent's eyes hardened. "Ma'am, if you don't cooperate, we'll have to escalate this matter," she said. "Escalate?" Sasha echoed incredulously, feeling her control slipping. Her voice rose. "You've already humiliated me in front of everyone at security, and now you're trying to steal my belongings? This is harassment!" Her words bounced off the corridor walls. The agents exchanged glances. She couldn't read their expressions, but they seemed taken aback by her intensity. The male agent stepped forward, his expression stern. "You need to calm down," he said, a note of condescension in his voice. "We're just doing our job." Sasha forced herself to take a deep breath. She knew losing her temper completely might only make things worse. "I'm calm," she said in a controlled tone, "but I'm also serious. I'm not going anywhere without my bag." Before the agents could respond, the manager from earlier reappeared at the end of the corridor, now flanked by 2 airport security guards. The already narrow space felt even more crowded as they approached. "What's going on here?" the manager demanded sharply. The female TSA agent straightened up. "We're conducting a secondary screening, and the passenger is refusing to comply," she reported. "That's not true," Sasha interjected, her frustration boiling over. "I've done everything you've asked, every pat-down, every question, every search, and now they want to take my bag for no reason. I objected, and somehow that's refusing to comply?" The manager's eyes narrowed at Sasha. "This is becoming a disruption," she said stiffly. "Miss, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the airport." Sasha felt like she'd been slapped. Her voice dropped to a strained whisper. "You can't be serious. I've done nothing wrong." The manager's expression was set like stone. We have the right to deny service to anyone who poses a potential security risk, she responded. Sasha's mouth fell open. A security risk? She repeated in disbelief. You're calling me a security risk because you don't like how I look? A heavy silence followed her words, more telling than any answer could have been. Sasha saw the manager's jaw clench, and one of the security guards shifted uncomfortably on his feet. The two guards stepped forward, looming on either side of the manager, their intention clear. Sasha's heart raced. She had never felt so threatened and powerless. She swallowed hard and raised her phone. "I'm calling my father," she announced, her voice wavering only slightly. Her thumb hit the redial button. As the line rang, she added, "He's on his way here right now." The manager hesitated, her confident facade faltering. Behind her, the male TSA agent muttered under his breath, just loud enough, "Daddy's coming to save the day, huh?" Sasha heard the snide remark, and her cheeks burned, but she refused to take the bait. She leaned back against the wall, arms crossed tightly, and focused on staying composed. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a new set of footsteps echoed down the hall. There was a change in the air, a shift as the tension peaked. Barack Obama appeared at the end of the corridor, striding toward the group with purpose. His expression was calm, but his eyes were steely with determination. The security guards straightened up at once, their faces flickering through surprise, recognition, and then a kind of nervous respect. The manager took a half-step back, her composure visibly shaken as she tried to muster a polite smile. Sasha pushed herself off the wall, relief and emotion flooding through her. "Miss Obama," Barack said, his tone measured and utterly in control, as if he were simply greeting her at home after a long day. "Are you all right?" Sasha nodded, though her face was flushed and her eyes shiny with held-back tears. They were going to kick me out of the airport," she managed, voice trembling. Barack's attention shifted to the manager. His face was neutral, but his voice carried a quiet power. "Is that true?" he asked the manager politely. The manager opened her mouth, scrambling for words. "Sir, we had some concerns regarding her behavior," she began defensively. "She was becoming disruptive, and we have protocols in place." "Disruptive?" Barack's eyebrow arched slightly, though his voice remained dangerously calm. "I would like to hear exactly how my daughter was being disruptive." The male TSA agent, perhaps emboldened by the manager's faltering, stepped forward. "She refused to comply with our security procedures," he said with a defensive edge. "We were just trying to do our jobs." "That's a lie," Sasha snapped, anger breaking through her composure. "I complied with every procedure you put me through. You treated me like a criminal for no reason. And when I finally objected to the harassment, you labeled it disruption." The agent's jaw tightened, but he had no retort. The manager avoided Sasha's eyes, looking thoroughly chastened. Barack Obama surveyed the group, disappointment etched on his face. "It seems there's been a serious misunderstanding," he said, his tone still polite but carrying unmistakable authority. "Let's get a few things clear. First, my daughter is not leaving this airport unless she decides to. Second, I want a detailed explanation of why she was singled out in the first place." The manager swallowed hard. "Sir, as I said, we have protocols. Her ticket was flagged, and we followed up accordingly," she tried to explain. "Flagged for what?" Barack interjected, his patience clearly wearing thin. "She had a valid ticket, a valid ID, and she was ready to board her flight. What exactly prompted all of this additional scrutiny?" The manager faltered, face reddening. The male TSA agent stepped in again, crossing his arms. "Look, sometimes we have to make judgment calls, especially if something or someone doesn't feel right," he said, attempting to justify their actions. Barack's expression hardened. "Something didn't feel right?" he repeated slowly, his voice dropping. "What exactly was it about my daughter That felt wrong to you? The way she looks?" An uncomfortable silence fell. The female TSA agent glanced at her colleague and then down at her shoes. The male agent's bravado faded as he looked away. The manager blurted, "Sir, I assure you, we do not tolerate discrimination at this airport. Policies are well and good," Barack said coolly, cutting her off. "But actions matter more. And from where I'm standing, this entire situation reeks of bias. My daughter is standing here humiliated and shaken because your team decided she didn't belong in business class. Am I wrong?" No one answered him. Their silence was damning. Sasha could see the manager's face drain of color as she realized the depth of the trouble they were in. Barack exhaled, turning back to Sasha with a gentler expression. "Are you ready to go, Sasha?" he asked softly. Sasha swallowed and nodded. She had never been more ready to leave a place in her life. As much as she wanted to put this entire ordeal behind her, a part of her bristled at the idea of walking away without any consequences for these people. Father and daughter turned to leave. Behind them, the manager spoke up, her voice cracking slightly. "Sir, perhaps we can discuss this further?" Barack paused and glanced back over his shoulder. When he spoke, each word was measured and firm. "You'll be hearing from me, and I suggest you all prepare for a thorough review of your so-called protocols." The quiet menace in his voice left everyone in stunned silence. With that, he put a protective hand on Sasha's back and guided her out of the restricted corridor, back toward the main terminal. The clack of Sasha's shoes and the thud of her father's footsteps echoed as the tension hung thick in the air behind them. Out in the terminal, the world rushed on as if nothing had happened. People hurried to gates, eyes on screens or phones, oblivious to the drama that had unfolded nearby. Barack led Sasha to a quieter corner near a row of chairs, away from the security area. He turned to her and gently grasped her shoulders, looking into her eyes. "Sasha, you have nothing to apologize for," he said preemptively, seeing the embarrassment and sorrow on her face. "What happened to you today is completely unacceptable, and none of it was your fault. You did the right thing calling me." Sasha nodded, her throat tight. "I'm sorry you had to come all the way down here," she murmured. "I didn't know what else to do." Barack shook his head. "I'm your father. There's nowhere else I would be after hearing what they were doing. And again, none of this is on you." His voice was gentle, but she could see the anger simmering just beneath the surface of his calm exterior. Before Sasha could respond, a small delegation of airport and airline staff hurried toward them. At the front was a woman with a name tag that read M. Patel. Two other staff members flanked her, looking tense and uncomfortable. "Mr. Obama," the lead representative began, clearly striving for a respectful tone. "On behalf of the airport and the airline, I'd like to sincerely apologize for the inconvenience you and your daughter experienced this morning." Barack fixed her with a steady stare. "Inconvenience?" he repeated, his voice polite but edged in steel. "Is that what you'd call this?" Miss Patel flushed slightly and glanced at her colleagues. "Sir, I assure you we take this matter very seriously. I've been informed of the situation and we are already looking into it," she said. "Looking into it?" Barack echoed, his disbelief evident. He took a step forward. "Let me be clear. My daughter was humiliated, singled out, and treated as though she had no right to be here. That's not an inconvenience. That's outright discrimination." Sasha stood by quietly, her emotions a swirl of vindication and lingering hurt as she listened to her father speak truth to power on her behalf. Patel's composure faltered. "You're absolutely right, sir. We deeply regret what happened," she said. "If there's anything we can do to make this right." Barack didn't miss a beat. For starters, I want the names of every TSA agent and staff member involved in this incident. Then I expect a full report on the protocols that allowed this to happen. And finally, I want your assurance that this kind of behavior will be addressed and eradicated, not just here, but everywhere under your airline's watch. Ms. Patel nodded vigorously and pulled out a notepad, scribbling as he spoke. Of course, Mr. Obama. I'll personally see to it that all of your concerns are addressed. Barack met her eyes with a level gaze. You'll do more than address them, he said. Because if I don't see immediate, concrete changes, I'll make sure this incident is brought to the attention of every major news outlet in the country. Even though his tone remained civil, the gravity of that threat sent a ripple of alarm through the group. Patel nodded again, her face pale. Understood, sir, she said quietly. The apologetic entourage retreated, leaving Sasha and her father alone again. Barack placed a reassuring hand on Sasha's shoulder. We're not done here, he said to her softly, meaning not done fighting this injustice. But first, let's get you on that flight. Sasha released a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding, and nodded. By the time they returned to the gate, the airline had discreetly delayed the flight to accommodate them. Other passengers had been murmuring among themselves, and some were craning their necks to spot the commotion. Now, seeing Barack Obama arriving with his daughter, the whispers grew louder, but no one dared complain openly. The gate agent, who looked a bit starstruck and extremely nervous, quickly scanned their boarding passes. Have a wonderful flight, Mr. Obama, Ms. Obama, he said, his voice respectful and a little shaky. Sasha and her father walked down the jet bridge. Only when they finally settled into their business class seats did Sasha feel the tension in her body begin to ease. She exhaled long and slow. For a moment, she simply sat there, eyes closed, letting the fact that this nightmare was over sink in. Barack waited until the plane was taxiing before he turned to his daughter. How are you holding up? He asked quietly. Sasha offered a small, weary smile. I think I'm okay, just tired, she said. He placed a hand over hers. You handled that about as well as anyone could. Standing up for yourself and calling me took courage, Sasha. I'm proud of you. Her eyes welled despite herself, but she blinked back the tears. It shouldn't take courage just to be treated like a person, she murmured. No, it shouldn't, he agreed, squeezing her hand. But until people stop making unfair assumptions, we have to keep pushing back. The flight itself was smooth and uneventful, a stark contrast to the chaos on the ground that morning. Yet Sasha couldn't relax. As she gazed out the window at the clouds, she replayed everything in her mind. The TSA agent's sneers, the manager's cold dismissal, the security guards closing in on her. Her father's presence had stopped the nightmare from getting worse, but the hurt and anger still simmered inside her. Sensing her troubled silence, Barack asked gently, "What are you thinking about?" Sasha turned from the window to face him. Her expression had hardened into resolve. I'm thinking about how to make sure this never happens to anyone else, she said. Barack gave a small nod, a faint smile of pride tugging at the corner of his mouth. Good, he said, because this fight isn't just about you or me. It's about everyone who's ever been made to feel like they don't belong. When they landed in New York, a car was waiting to take them into the city. As they stepped into the terminal at JFK Airport, Barack's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and showed it to Sasha. It was an email from Ms. Patel, detailing the immediate steps being taken in response to the incident. In the final line, Sasha saw, "The employees involved have been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation." It was a start, Sasha felt a small measure of satisfaction reading those words, but it didn't erase the morning's trauma. Barack slipped his phone back into his pocket, his jaw set. She could tell he was already thinking of next steps. Later that day, Barack got on a call with some of his staff and advisors. He calmly but firmly recounted the events at Reagan National, insisting that this was an example of a broader problem. By the time he hung up, plans were in motion to address the issue at a higher level. By the next morning, news of the incident had made its way into the media. Headlines and hashtags were popping up. Sasha Obama targeted in airport incident. Former president demands TSA accountability. And bias at the gate. The story struck a nerve across the country. Public reaction was swift and intense. Many were outraged on Sasha's behalf, flooding social media with messages of support and stories of similar experiences. Of course, there were also detractors who claimed the Obamas were overreacting or using their influence to get special treatment. But despite some noise, it was clear the incident had exposed something that resonated widely. Within days, the TSA and the airline launched internal investigations. Reports emerged that this wasn't an isolated case. Other passengers had lodged complaints about profiling and mistreatment at that airport and others. Encouraged by the attention on Sasha's case, a few TSA whistleblowers even came forward, describing a workplace culture that allowed implicit bias to go unchecked. The TSA agents who had targeted Sasha were swiftly removed from active duty, pending the investigation. One of them, identified by the press as Mark Henson, attempted to defend himself to reporters, claiming he was just following protocol. But that defense fell apart when videos surfaced of him behaving brusquely with other passengers, and when a fellow TSA employee anonymously revealed that Henson had a history of making disparaging remarks about travelers of color. As the evidence mounted, Henson and the other agent involved in harassing Sasha were fired. The airport manager who had ordered Sasha removed was also forced to resign after an internal review found her actions unjustified and discriminatory. Watching these developments unfold on the news, Sasha felt a sense of validation, but also a deep sadness. It shouldn't have taken a high-profile incident involving her to spark this kind of action. How many others without famous last names had suffered similar indignities with no recourse? In the weeks following, Sasha chose to speak out publicly about what happened to her. She gave a few interviews and wrote an op-ed describing not just her own experience, but the larger issues of bias and prejudice in security practices. Her voice was clear and passionate, and it struck a chord with many Americans. Barack stood by her side through it all, sometimes literally, but often just watching proudly as his daughter found her own voice and used it. "This is your fight too," he told her one evening after a day full of phone calls and preparation for a press conference. "You have the power to make a difference, Sasha. Don't be afraid to use it." At the same time, Barack was working behind the scenes with officials in Washington. He met with the TSA administrator and key people at the Department of Transportation to push for changes. In a closed-door meeting, he recounted Sasha's story in detail, then broadened the conversation. "This isn't about just one incident. It's about making sure our security procedures respect the dignity of every passenger." He proposed a series of reforms: mandatory bias and sensitivity training for all TSA employees, the establishment of an independent oversight board to review complaints, and clearer protocols to prevent abuse of discretion. By the end of those discussions, the officials in the room, some of whom had initially been defensive, were nodding in agreement. They agreed to begin implementing these measures immediately. Of course, change would not happen overnight, but a crucial first step had been taken. Back at home in Washington, a few weeks later, Sasha was preparing to speak at a national youth leadership conference about her experience and what it taught her. She stood in front of her bedroom mirror, practicing her speech, when her father knocked on the door. "How are you feeling?" he asked, leaning in the doorway. Smoothed her blazer and turned to face him. "A little nervous," she admitted, "but ready." Barack smiled. "You'll do great. Just speak from the heart. People will listen." Later that day, in a grand hall decked with banners about justice and equality, Sasha stepped up to the podium in front of hundreds of attentive faces. She took a deep breath and began her speech. "Good morning," she started. "My name is Sasha Obama, and I'm here to talk to you about something that happened to me and why it matters to all of us." She then recounted her story, from the moment she walked into the airport that early morning to the moment she landed in New York. She described the fear, the anger, the humiliation, and the determination that followed. "This isn't just about me," Sasha said, her voice echoing in the hall. "It's about every person who has ever been made to feel like they don't belong anywhere, especially when they've done nothing wrong. It's about a system that allowed prejudice to dictate how people are treated, and it's about making sure that what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else." The audience was silent, hanging on her every word. She spoke about bias and equality, about the responsibility we have to challenge unfair treatment wherever we see it. When she finished, the hall erupted in applause. Barack, watching from the wings, felt a swell of pride. Sasha stepped off the stage, and he wrapped her in a hug. "You were incredible," he whispered. Sasha smiled, with tears in her eyes, tears of relief, of pride, of hope. In the following months, the reforms at the TSA began to take hold. Officers nationwide attended new training sessions aimed at confronting and eliminating bias. A new independent oversight committee started reviewing cases, ensuring accountability for agents who stepped out of line. Airports set up hotlines for travelers to report discrimination or harassment. Not everyone was happy about the changes. Some complained they were unnecessary or burdensome, but progress rarely comes without pushback. Sasha continued to lend her voice to the cause. She met with youth groups, joined discussions on panels, and used social media to spread awareness about travelers' rights and dignity. Each time she heard of someone being treated better or a policy being changed, it felt like a validation of her ordeal, proof that speaking out had made a difference. One afternoon, Sasha received an email from a young woman who had recently flown through the same airport. The woman wrote that, thanks to Sasha's story being in the news, she noticed a change. TSA agents were polite, even kind, and she breezed through her screening. "I don't know what changed," the woman wrote, "but I wanted to thank you. Your story made a difference." Sasha read the message twice, then forwarded it to her father. He replied simply, "This is why we fight." On a calm evening, a couple of months after the incident, Sasha and her father sat together on their back patio, watching the sun set over Washington, D.C. The hardest battles of the past weeks were behind them. The investigations were over, the news cycle had moved on, and new policies were beginning to be drafted and enacted. Sasha sipped a cup of tea while her dad drank coffee, both lost in thought for a moment. Sasha broke the silence. "Dad, do you think things will ever really change?" Her voice was soft, almost tentative. Barack regarded her thoughtfully. "Change is always slow," he said. "But every step forward matters. Every voice that speaks up, every injustice that's challenged, it all adds up. The fact that you're asking that question and that you're willing to fight for the answers means we're already on the right path." Sasha nodded, letting his words sink in. She felt that familiar determination kindle inside her once more. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but she was committed to walking it. Sasha Obama's experience at Reagan National Airport had started as a personal nightmare, but it became a catalyst for change. It was a stark reminder of the work still needed to build a world where everyone is treated with fairness and respect. It showed the power of speaking up and the impact one voice, no matter how young, can have on an entire system. And for Sasha, it marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one where she would never shy away from standing up for what is right. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your voice matters here, and together, we amplify those that are too often ignored. New stories are coming soon. Stay with us.